Hi, everyone. I'm attorney Donna DiMaggio Berger, and this is Take It to the Board, where we speak condo and HOA. Like-minded associations in many areas throughout the country band together under the umbrella of a voluntary organization which provides value in the form of shared wisdom, vendor contacts, as well as advocacy and educational resources. These organizations can be fairly informal, with a smattering of meetings throughout the year, or they can be powerhouses with a formal infrastructure and a strong sense of community. So how do you find these kinds of groups? How do you create them? And what are the benefits of becoming involved with one? My guest today is Ernesto Cuesta, who is the president of the Brickell Homeowners Association, or BHA. The BHA was founded in 1990 and represents condominium communities from Miami River to Rickenbacker Causeway, from Biscayne Bay on the east to Southwest 3rd Avenue on the west. And they represent thousands of residents and partner with scores of businesses, corporations, public associations, stores, restaurants, and other amenities that share the common goal of improving the quality of life for the Brickell community. Ernesto is going to talk to us about his experiences in this space and hopefully help other communities grow stronger together. So Ernesto, welcome to Take It to the Board.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your invitation.
Well, I wanted to start out by asking you, what was the original motivation, Ernesto, for creating an umbrella group to represent the needs of Brickell condominium communities?
Actually, it was the idea of brilliant individuals, investors in the Brickell area, that they saw the vision, they had the vision that of the growth and the development that was coming to the area. So actually, this group started meeting back in 1985. And how we started with the idea and the concept. At the same time, this group was monitoring, like I said before, the development that was taking place and the plans that there were for this particular area. And that's how everything started, 1985. And then back in 1990, May 10, 1990 is when the organization was established.
Did you start out fairly informally? Was it just a group of visionaries who decided to meet, for coffee or breakfast, and then from there it grew into a more formal structure?
That's how it started. It started like meeting, breakfast meetings. And I recall it was at the Emporium, Brickell Emporium, was where the Flatiron building is located now. So usually those meetings took place Saturdays. Every Saturday in the morning. And that's how everything was structured, developed, and then implemented.
So did everybody have the same idea about what an umbrella group of condominium communities should look like back in 1985 and 1990?
At that point in time, there was nothing to follow. There was no model to follow. But like I'm saying, this group of very wise individuals that were heavily involved in the development, finances. They were visionaries, and they saw this great future for the area coming up. And they decided that something had to be planned, and something had to be in place in order to support ourselves, in order to take care better of the quality of life of the people that were going to live in the area, and then at the same time to protect their investments.
So you're the young guy back then, and I know your passion for education. How do they convince Ernesto Cuesta to get involved with this new group, this new umbrella group?
I was the youngest of the group. I mean, most of these individuals were in the late 50s and 60s. So I actually, back then, I was 25 years old, 1985. But I was heavily involved in the education. Our family are very pro-education. And back then I was heavily involved and closely involved with the PTSA of Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and was a VP for the largest region, Region 4 of Dade County Public Schools. So they saw my involvement and my community service at that point in time. And it's obvious because, in any growing community or planned community to be developed, what you need is schools. So that's how they invited me to the meeting. And then I remember that I consulted with my grandmother, and she said to me, you need to get involved because, we have investments in the area. And this is a good way to protect your investments and to make sure that we protect the quality of life of the residents in the area. So that's how I got involved.
That makes sense because most people, when you ask them, why did you get on your condo or HOA board? It's kind of the same thought process that for many people, their home is their largest single investment. So
Mm-hmm.
they do volunteer and want to get involved on their board to protect that investment. So that kind of tracks with what you're saying in terms of getting involved with the BHA, which was your investment in the community. But I wanted to ask you, so you're back then, you're just starting out, you don't have a model for this umbrella group. There's no others that you can pick up the phone and say, hey, how did you set this up? And this is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast, because right now, listen, we're in the state of Florida taping this, but there are other communities around the country, around the world that are back in the Brickell days, back in the early 1980s, where they don't have a model. And perhaps listening to this podcast and seeing and learning how you did it way back then, that will give them some takeaways. So how did you first decide, how are we going to set this up? Do we incorporate? Do we have bylaws? Do we, how formal do we want to make this thing?
No, since day one, the idea was to make it very formal and to register the organization. That was the idea from the get-go. To establish a solid organization with a structure, with leaders capable of taking the organization to where we are today. Basically, those were the roots of this organization. And that's why it's going to be our 34th year now, coming up in May the 10th. So, to be working with results in a community for 34 years, something would have been established. And that's where we are right now. Because it was a structure, it was well planned, and you had dedicated and committed individuals able to accomplish something that they had a vision and they realized and they lived through that vision.
So you had the manpower, you had the passion. What about the funds? How did you fund the vision of BHA?
Let's put it this way. Nowadays, for many years, we didn't increase our membership, but actually today, as we speak, we charge $6 per unit per year. That's our membership. And then getting sponsors and associate members. And we integrated into our membership fundraising, if you want to say, what you want to call it, providers, like property management companies, like, plumbing companies, electrical companies, all of those providers that we saw that eventually we were going to need them to provide their services to the buildings that were being developed in the area. Aside from the normal membership of the association, we don't receive any funds. We have never received any funds from the government or any other municipality. We just basically are associate members fees and our association members fees. That's all that we charge, and that's how we collect our funds.
So what's the criteria to become a sponsor, and what's the criteria to become a BHA member as a condo association?
Okay. To become a BHA member, you just apply. You have to the building have to be in our area, in our catchment area, and then you have to pay. Let's say you have 150 units. You pay $6 per unit. That's your fee, annual fee, and that's how you become a member. And then whoever the board assigned to those to represent the association are the ones that are registered at the BHA, at the Brickell Homeowners Association. On the associate members, you have to send an application, pay a fee. I think right now it's about $2,500 or something a year. And then you are allowed to make your presentations and we advertise your logos and your company services and things like that. It's very straightforward. But let me tell you something. I'm not bragging about it, but we have a good media, I would say promotion, advertising within our organization.
Oh, you're talking about your social media?
Yes, we do.
Oh, your social media game is real strong.
Yes, we do.
It's very strong. It's. I have to say, listen, we deal with and know a lot of umbrella organizations, not only throughout Florida, but in New York and New Jersey, other parts of the Northeast. I think you have one of the strongest social media presences I've seen out there. So whoever's doing your in-house social media, kudos to them because they're doing a really great job. And they're doing a great job of showing your vision of community, in my opinion, because I see the events. I want to talk about the events. How many events do you put on a year?
Many. I mean, sometimes we have about like more than 3 events, sometimes a month. I mean, and we're heavily involved in the community with the developers, with the school system, with charter schools, with the state legislature. We are very active with our representatives. We are very active during the session in Tallahassee, the legislative session in Tallahassee. We're very active. We promote registration campaigns for voters. We do a lot of community involvement, and that's the way it should be. That was part of the vision of this organization from the get-go. You need to get involved. You need to be visible, outsider. You need to attend commission meetings. You need to engage with your representatives. That's the key. And then promote and encourage your membership to go to the polls.
So how far out do you plan those events, and how do is it the board of BHA that's deciding, hey, we're going to direct our resources, our attention, our focus here? You mentioned the legislature. So
Yes.
Do you sit down ahead of time, months ahead of time, and say, these are the legislators we want to talk to, that we want to invite to our events? How does this work? Because again, I'm trying to give the people out there that are thinking about creating something similar in their backyard.
That is called planning and strategizing. Before the end of the year, we at the executive committee, we get together and we gather from all the different executive committee members ideas to put it in writing in black and white in our what we call legislative agenda, our goals and objectives for the coming year. And that's how we set up our agenda. We said this year we're going to do X amount of events. We're going to work hard on these issues with the condos or the HOAs in Tallahassee. We're going to advocate for these issues that are affecting our community. We prepare ourselves. We prepare ourselves. It's planning. And that's what any organization should be doing, whether you are a not-for-profit or a profit organization or even a private business. Strategizing and planning is a key for any organization to succeed.
I couldn't agree more. Do you feel that your voices are truly heard by our legislators? I mean, we've seen some significant legislation this past session that ended, I think, was March 8th. Most of the legislation is a mixed bag, right? It makes some people happy. It makes other people unhappy. Do you feel like your voices are heard by the legislators with whom you're interacting?
I strongly feel, and we strongly feel, that our voices are heard. That sometimes we accomplish everything in our agenda. I'd be lying to you? No. But we accomplish, I would say, high percentage of what we plan through the year. And let's put it this way, when we speak, I think that some people listen because we're very active. And when you present issues to a state legislature, and when you make presentations to our community, our constituents, we do it with facts in hands. We just don't talk like a parrot in a parrot jungle that start, talking things with no substance. No, we don't do that. And another thing that we have in our organization is that we like to educate our constituents. We like to inform of what is going on, an update of what is going on within the industry of HOAs and condos. Because the more information that you disseminate, and the more that you educate your constituents, the better results that you're going to obtain. Because going back to how we the people change things, going to the polls and informing people what is affecting and what is it that we have to change in order to make the quality of life a better place to live. Well,
this is going to be exciting. We got a lot of elections coming up. So you're right. I mean, Voltaire famously said, people get the government they deserve. In the most basic interpretation of that is, if you don't participate, you don't have a say in who becomes your public policy makers.
That is correct. That's how we have been, I would say, victims of apathy and getting tired of seeing the same recycled faces. But it's our fault because, in this community, we have a lot of potential in young people. And we are the ones that have to promote these young people and encourage them to run for office. I strongly feel that we had at times elected poor politicians, in the sense, lack of vision, individuals that are looking only of what the constitution can do for them and not what they can do for the constituents. But it has been our fault. We don't vote enough and smartly in order to change the scenic of what we are experiencing nowadays. But I'm very optimistic. I think that let's put it this way: the only way that you learn is making mistakes.
Right. Very true.
So and then what you have to do is correct those mistakes. I'm pointing out what those mistakes are, and the mistakes are that we have to step aside from recycled faces. Bring new potential, elected officials into the arena, which we have. We have a lot of young people here in this community.
So you're actually encouraging young people in your area to enter politics, to get into this arena and make a difference.
Always. That's goal number one.
That's impressive. Now, listen, you've touched on what an umbrella group like BHA can do with regard to legislation, which is important because you're comprised of condominium associations. And condominiums are creatures of statute. So it only makes sense that you are working with public policy makers, because every year we know what? We are assured that there are going to be a number of bills that are proposed that are going to impact your constituency. But in the introduction, Ernesto, I also mentioned a couple other things that are a really big focus for umbrella groups. One is vendor referrals. So at your meeting, you may have, this condominium on Brickell that is, right in the process of seeking bids for concrete restoration. They come to a meeting. Do they ask around and say, hey, tell me your good and bad experiences about this type of project? How does that work?
That is correct. Most of our associate members, like I said, they come from different aspects in the industry. Like I said, plumbing, plumbers, electrical companies, and things like that. So what we do is that within our membership, we promote the vendors. It will make sense. And let me tell you something. Our concept is, another part of our concept of the success of this organization is that from the get-go, we said it to everyone, we need to help you to succeed. Because if we help you to succeed as a company, we are going to do better, much better, which is true. We need every single business owner, every single company that provides services to our constituents to do a great job. And we need to help them and to promote the services. Because if they do good, we're going to do better. Why are we going to do better? Because number one, our credibility will stand for on who are we referring, number one. And number two, the services that we're going to be provided within our investments that we have in this area will be top quality, meaning that the value of our investments are not going to go down the drain. So we need to help you to succeed for us to do much better.
What if, despite your best efforts, a sponsor doesn't come through? They get, they're doing work for one of your members, your association members, and it doesn't work out the way the member hoped it had. Take a typical roofing project or concrete restoration or painting waterproofing. Do you part ways with that vendor, or do you, give them a second chance? How does that work?
Can I tell you something? We have never had that experience.
You are very lucky. You've never had that experience.
We have never had that experience. We have solid professionals. We have solid business owners. We're very lucky. I think that we are very lucky. But they know our ethics and values and how we operate. And I think that from the top, if you show what the type of values and principles that you stand by and you live through, that's our life. That's how we operate. So, if you surround yourself, you're going to surround yourself as much responsibility that you show to them. If you're going to attract better quality individuals by the way that you behave. It's simple.
Well, that track record tells me you may have occasionally turn down an application then, either for a member or for a vendor. Has that ever happened where you've said, after looking at the application, maybe not the best fit for BHA?
For the first time in 34 years, to my knowledge, this year we rejected one applicant for the first time. And I hope that we don't have to do it again. But we never had experienced that until this year, that there was an associate member that applied for the membership, and apparently this individual had some friction with other members. We cannot be referees, but at the same time, we cannot bring any discordance or any, I would say, ambiguity or discrepancy among our members, because we never had it before. So
I mentioned shared wisdom. So a lot of times we recommend that boards go to board certification classes together as a team building experience, right? Rather than just 2 of the 5 going off, it'd be nice to get the entire board together, because not all boards play together cohesively and play together well. So to have them go have a team building experience, and the new law in Florida is going to require some significant mandatory education for board members, which I think is a good thing for them to get together. The shared wisdom under your umbrella group, it comes from 2 places, really. Well, really 3, your leadership, the BHA leadership, the outside experts and vendors you bring in to share their wisdom, and also amongst the members themselves. I'm wondering how the members themselves kind of share either their war stories or their recommendations. Is there a formal way, or do they just chat at meetings, or is there an email group, or is there a social media group where these people chat?
Well, it is a combination. Yeah, we do. We encourage our members to write to our emails. And yes, our personnel, Abby Ape, she's our director, and she follows with the people are, usually with any complaint or any observation they have to make about police enforcement or city issue that they might have, or even association issue, even though we don't get involved in what happens in any particular association. But when any of our members bring to our attention any issue, we try to help them to resolve it between themselves, or try to guide them what is the best way to go and how to approach the issue and resolve it. So that's how we do it. We're very active in that too.
Do you have a vision statement for the organization?
We have a vision statement, and it's very simple. It is to protect, to enhance, and secure the quality of life of the residents in the Brickell area within the BHA.
Does your organization take any position in terms of enforcing regulations if you became aware that a member association was not complying? I would imagine that's not something that you get involved with.
No, we don't get involved, but we guide. Let's say that, for example, this year, I want to tell you the experience that we're having this year. There are few members, buildings that are under investigation. And yes, we had got involved with the state. We had guided some of those individuals to take the path that they should, because it's affecting the quality of life for the people that live here.
That's important, because it's one thing for an association to hear it from a professional, you have to do this, or to hear it from the state, but to hear it from your peer group that you've been working with, hey, you need to do this as well. I would imagine that's a different perspective. So yeah, I'm really happy to hear that, because we've got some very significant deadlines coming up in Florida, right? And you may, as well as other umbrella groups throughout Florida, may become aware that some of the member associations maybe are not meeting those deadlines.
2 years ago, we projected that the condo industry was going to be heading to what we call an MRI phase. And, people start joking, well, MRI, what do you mean by MRI? Well, it's simple. Maintenance, reserves, and insurance. Mm-hmm. And this year is going to be critical, because the new, aside from the traditional reserves, as you are aware, you have to deal with SERVs. And then you have to deal with the milestone, some of our buildings, not only here in the Brickell area, but everywhere else. And it's going to impact every single association financially, and there will be individuals living on a fixed income that will not be able to live in a condo. So the more that you educate your constituents, the more information, professional and information with substance that you provide to your members, the better educated decisions they will make in their respective associations. And that's what we are at a very critical point right now. And this year is going to break a lot of associations financially. It is a fact.
Do you think they're prepared, Ernesto? Are they prepared for what's coming?
I don't think that, no, I'm honest with you. We are honest with you. I think that people are waking up now and realizing that the tsunami is here already. And you have to swim, because if you don't swim,
you drown. You drown. For our listeners who may not be aware of what Ernesto is referencing, after the Champlain Towers tragedy, that building collapsed, there was legislation passed in Florida that required statewide engineering inspections for older buildings, for threshold buildings, which are 3 stories or higher. Prior to that time, there were only 2 counties in Florida that required older buildings to be certified. And those 2 counties were Miami-Dade and Broward. After Champlain Towers, now all 67 Florida counties must have older buildings inspected. And the other significant change was a reserve funding mandate, which said that if you are a threshold building, 3 stories or higher, you have to have a structural integrity reserve study, which is the acronym is SIRS. And you have to, it's mandated reserve funding for those structural components. And the reason for that, the legislature thought 2 things. Older buildings need to be inspected for safety, and associations need to put aside money to be able to perform ongoing maintenance and repairs. So that's what we're talking about now, because we've got a lot of people listening throughout the country. Look, the goals are worthy, right? Because if we wind up with the safest housing stock in the United States, that would be a worthy goal. But unfortunately, what's happening is that for decades in many associations, the reserves were underfunded or waived altogether. Maintenance was perhaps not top of mind. We also have the issue that we talk about a lot as attorneys, Ernesto, which is safe buildings start with the people who build them, right? So we also have issues with buildings that started out with construction defects. I almost said birth defects, but it's kind of the same thing. If you start out with a problem, no matter how much maintenance you're doing, unless that problem is corrected, you're going to have challenges.
That is correct. And for example, I'm sure that you have clients, even as of when they were working on the 2024 budget for this year. There were a lot of associations that they still waive their reserves, the traditional reserves, knowing that at some point in time this year they have to pick up the ball, and they're going to be impacted even harder than if they were taking measurements financially for this coming year. So now it's going to be more heavy on the 2025 budgets coming up. And it does not make any sense. I see the reserves for any association like having a retirement plan. If you don't save, how good or how bad your retirement is going to be? It's simple as that. There are going to be emergencies in your life. There are going to be health issues that you might have as a person. You have to have some extra funds in order to cover for those emergencies. Well, guess what? Buildings, they have the same needs.
Well, this brings us full circle to what we talked about at the outset, which is how education is key, because there was a lot of misinformation being put out there, whether it was innocent or not so innocent, that the legislature may extend the deadlines for either the milestone inspection or the SIRS. And that did not happen. And I think that was a really strong message that the legislature was sending. There wasn't even any proposal that would have extended the deadline. So I think to your point, that people were still waiving or underfunding reserves was because in some quarters, they were hopeful that they were going to get more time. And they're running out of time. It's the end of this year for the older buildings to do all this work. And I do worry about the people who are going to be displaced. But to your point, listen, people have made decisions to change their housing options depending where they are in life. So, you've got the traditional starter home for the young couple that's starting out. Maybe it's a little small apartment. When they have more funds, they move up to their first home. Then they have a family. Maybe they're doing better. Now they move to the bigger home. And then at some point, the kids go away. Now they're empty nesters. Now they're moving again. Maybe now they're downsizing. What kind of astonishes me, Ernesto, is some people are thinking, I don't want to change at all. Like, I need to live here, but to be able to live here, we can't fund reserves and we can't do any maintenance. That mindset, it's a very fixed mindset.
Well, that is over. That is over. I was talking to an association today that they were neglecting totally the responsibility through decades. Now, it is easy. But by the way, most of these associations, they're going to really blame property management companies. They're going to blame managers. They're going to blame everybody else except themselves because they are in denial, unfortunately. And sometimes you have to tell people the truth in their faces, even though it hurts. Sometimes the truth hurts, but it's the truth. And you have to take it as it is. And this year, like I'm saying, we had a vision of projecting that this was going to happen almost 2 years ago. And we have been telling everybody, MRI, MRI, MRI. Well, it is here. Maintenance, reserves, and insurance. It is a reality.
Well, let's talk about the I in MRI. So I don't know if you're hearing this, but I'm hearing from a lot of condominiums, they want to self-insure. So they're a smaller building and they're saying, but Donna, everybody agrees that we don't want to buy windstorm coverage. And again, we're not giving out legal advice on the podcast, but are you hearing the same grumbling out there that, we want to underinsure, we want to self-insure, and everybody agrees that we shouldn't be spending this amount of money on insurance?
But I'm going to make an observation. How are you going to be self-insured when some of them or some of these associations, they have neglected to have reserves? That's very dangerous. Super dangerous. As a matter of fact, we as an organization, we will never recommend the state to do so, to accept that. I think that is you are shooting yourself in the foot.
Well, you just hit on it. Self-insurance means that you have enough money set aside that if you had damage, you could pay for it. What they're really asking is, we don't have any money to pay for it, but we also don't want to pay for insurance.
That is waiving the reserves. Simple as that. Think about it. Self-insured will be like waiving the reserves. If they don't have the funds to even do appropriate maintenance to the buildings, how come do you think that they're going to have money to pay for an insurance claim? That is going to happen. It's going to happen. It's normal to have water damage. It's normal. I mean, and we live in an area affected by storms and hurricanes and you name it, and rain. And it is what it is. I think, by the way, going back to extending the measurements that the state had taken on the milestone, on the reserve stories and things like that, we as an organization, more than a year ago, seeing what is coming from what we are seeing and making sure that every single organization was planning accordingly and we're getting ready to transition into these new laws that we saw coming. We asked the state Senate, to extend that grace period. And we were told, in black and white, by the Senate leadership, Ernesto, we don't have the appetite to do that. Because I think that what we're extending is someone with a terminal disease that eventually is going to die. And I think that, you know what, the leadership in Tallahassee were right to say and to vote to strengthen these laws, and we supported that. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, it should have been done sooner. Because, like I said to you before, I stated a few minutes ago, you have clients that as of last year, they were in denial, and they were still waiving the reserves.
They're still in denial. So, and you're right, the legislature, when it comes to life safety issues, they really don't have an appetite because we could have another tragedy. What's somewhat shocking to me is despite what happened with Champlain Towers, and again, we still don't have the final findings in terms of the existence of construction defect, the impact of new construction going up next door, the reserve funding issue, the maintenance issue. But you would think that tragedy would have changed some minds about this, and yet I find not so much. People have very short memories.
Another thing is that we supported the state by enforcing some type of accountability to board members. We don't think that by only signing an affidavit saying that you have read the conduct docs, you're already certified as a board member. I think that we need better board members to serve associations. And in talking to a lot of associations, good associations, by the way, they are even saying that it's going to be hard to find good board members to participate in the process because accountability and what they should be responsible. I mean, they have to be responsible. It's like running a municipality. I mean, a board is like a commission. You are elected, you are an elected official. So I know it's a volunteer, but there are a lot of people skeptical right now as we speak. Some people, they don't want to be in board members as a board members anymore. But it's part of the industry. It's part of our responsibility as a volunteer. I don't know if eventually the state is going to allow some type of a compensation to board members.
In Florida, they can be compensated if it's in their documents. If the bylaws provide for compensation, but I've only seen a handful that have ever provided for it and actually paid for it. But I understand your point. Maybe a paid position would, net someone better candidates. I do analogize this sometimes to the voir dire process. I don't know if you're familiar, but during jury selection, attorneys that conduct voir dire, they want to find out if a potential juror is who they would select for that particular trial. I would want to ask candidates, are you willing, if you get on the board, to make the hard decisions? Because what we're seeing, what you're talking about, Ernesto, in terms of denial, the pushback from the members. You can't raise the budget. We do not increase the assessments. So they're keeping the assessments artificially low and then specially assessing for reserves, when reserves by their very nature should be funded through the budget. Okay. I'd like to ask certain candidates to the board, are you willing to push back against that? You're serving as a fiduciary. Are you willing to say, no, we are meeting these deadlines. We must meet these deadlines. By the way, they must, because if they don't, it's right in the statute that they will be in breach of their fiduciary duty. But I just don't know that the right questions are being asked of the candidates if they know what is really expected of them when serving on a board.
Yes, it is a very major concern from our end because, we speak to a lot of members. And let me tell you, a lot of people are saying, I'm not running for the board. But then you ask yourself a question. If you are not willing to serve, okay, then it's like when officials are elected and they don't do a good job, people complain a lot. Oh, but they complain a lot, but you didn't go and vote. You didn't offer yourself to services. So think about it. It is your investment. This is not like, if you don't get involved, complaining, you are not going to do anything. You are not going to solve the world. You're not going to solve that's not a solution. One example, radio talk shows. I understand that people sometimes they want to air their frustration and their anxiety and things like that. But when you hear all these talk shows, people calling and complaining about the government and things like that, my first question that comes to my mind is, have you reached out to your representatives to complain to them because they are the ones representing you, or to your commissioner, to your mayor? Did you vote in your last election? If you didn't do that, you are wasting your time. Because in a talk show, the only thing that you're going to do is like, I would say, it's a therapy for yourself, for somebody to hear you. But that's it. You are not making a big difference. You are not getting active. Now, when you are an owner in an association, and you see something wrong, then you have two choices. Either complain and do nothing, because keep complaining, it's like a broken record. Or you act. You act, you make a formal complaint to the BBR, or you make a complaint to your local authorities, or you run for office in order to make changes. But continue complaining is not the solution here. It's commitment. It's having the desire to change what is going on around you. And that is a typical thing that is happening in today's politics. We complain and complain and complain, but we don't do anything. We don't vote. We say, no, why should I vote? Everything is the same negativity. That does not work.
Do you think that's going to change? Or is human nature more, for most people, to take the path of least resistance? The path of least resistance is call a talk show, complain a little bit, feel like you've done something, and go on with your life.
No, I'm convinced that challenges force you to change. If you are not being challenged, you will not change. You will not make, take the road to action if you have challenges. This year is a year of challenges, and this is the time to act. And I think that people are going to be forced to act one way or the other.
So BHA has been in existence for 34 years. That's a long time. You may be the longest running or one of the longest running umbrella groups in Florida. Based on your experience, what are some key lessons that you've learned in managing an umbrella organization?
First of all, you have to be a good listener. You have to have an open mind. You have to accept criticism. You have to plan and strategize, and you have to get involved. And you have to get educated in issues that are affecting the community. If you don't do those things, I don't think that you're going nowhere. I think that's part of the success for any organization to succeed in their goals and objectives. I know it's not easy, it's time consuming, but again, you have investments to look for and to look after. If you don't do it, who's going to do it?
I agree. So somebody's listening right now and they're saying, you know what? Light bulb went on. This is a great idea. I want to create an umbrella group for the communities around me. What's the first two steps they should take?
I would say to gather those individuals that they share the same vision. Individuals that are committed to the vision and willing to work hard to make things happen. I would say that it's the commitment and desire. Set up and write down your goals and objectives and where you want to be. I mean, don't think about today. Think about tomorrow. And another thing, don't think about yourself. Think about the people around you.
That's great advice. That's great advice. Well, I want to thank you. Was there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have asked you?
Oh, how many more years I'm going to continue doing this?
Perfect. Well, actually, I should ask you what's on the agenda for the big 35th anniversary. You have to be cooking up something.
We're going to celebrate. There is no doubt about it.
All right. Well, congratulations and thank you on BHA's success and your significant role in that success. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation. You always can knock on doors and we will always be there.
Thanks again. Thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to follow and rate us on your favorite podcast platform or visit takeittotheboard.com for more ways to connect.